You are listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls deal with the blue pill world. I'm your host, John Dennison, and together we'll explore how to take an inner approach to your outer affairs so you can build a better life and a better world to live it in. Hello, my friend. John again. Today we're going to talk about detaching from the polarity wars. If you follow the last couple podcasts, we were focused primarily on the inner. Our last podcast we discussed ascension and the spiritual path and how those might be affecting your or impacting your life in terms of the context of the spiritual journey that your soul is making through reality. This is an inward focusing attention for your awareness. And today we're now going to speak more to the outward focusing or out-facing efforts of applications of your consciousness to the world in which you're living. One thing I've talked about before that I want you to understand is this concept of polarity wars. By polarity wars, I'm referring to the fact that the energies of our times are exacerbating our polarities with the polarities within us. As you know, we live in a dualistic world, and within that world, the energies tend to fluctuate from one extreme to another. Now, we may find ourselves at any one point in time at certain extremes, and we have extremes, all kinds of extremes of opposites, or pairs of opposites that we fluctuate between. But the one that I'm talking about primarily is the one with the way people deal with each other, the social interactions, the political wars, the way they treat and engage other people. So what I want you to begin to do is to start seeing yourself in your own life, and as you see yourself, to be seen in others, the fluctuations of their polarities. And you'll notice at certain times within their fluctuations, you may find that you actually agree with them on many things, and that you get along quite harmoniously. But that at other times, when you get into certain topics or certain times, or if there are certain places within that energy cycle, they're going to find you to be somewhat of a discordant nature to where they are at that point in time, and vice versa. You're going to look at them and say, "Geez, how could they feel this way? How could they see things like that?" And that's because they're locked into an energy within them that's bringing them a certain perspective. And you want to be able to see when people are getting stuck in these perspectives or energies. And usually you can tell when they're not able to consider anything other than the views that they're espousing at the moment. Then that's a real problem that we have in our society, is that there is a philosophy taking hold among some circles that they refer to as cancel culture, which basically does not accept that anyone other with a dissenting point of view or a dissenting perspective, well, I guess that's the same thing, would be able to relate or be related to. And basically that's because the ideas, they're vibrational ideas to the positions we take and to the ideas that we have, or vibrations to the ideas we have within us. Every thought has its own vibration, and some thoughts are at various points in the polarity scale than others are. But as you see that we get stuck within those beliefs and those places on the polarities, that is where the problems begin to arise. Because what happens is energy needs to flow. But when in polarity gets stuck, or we get stuck with basically attached to a certain point within our polarity, a certain perspective, a certain belief system, a certain ideology, a certain way of interacting with people, then that locks us up. It stops the energy from flowing. And energy is like water. It will seek its own level, and it will find a way to harmonize itself, but only if it's permitted to flow. That's why some of the philosophical traditions of the past, particularly I would suggest that you investigate Zen because it creates a nimbleness of perspective and belief. So because in Zen you tend to look at your thoughts and you begin to not become attached to them. And so that allows you to flow from one set of thoughts to another, and even if the energies change, you can change with the energies. But understand that it may not be that the thoughts that you're getting attached to or that you were getting attached to are even your own. Because I haven't yet determined that we are actually we generate our own thoughts. Many of them bubble up from places inside of us that are beyond our awareness. Now, right now, I would say that that's probably the subconscious, but it could just as easily be coming from the soul or some extra dimensional source that we're not aware of, considering that all life is one, and that if the Creator is trying to have a particular type of experience, it may want to influence that experience by not only controlling how the events unfold, but also the thoughts and beliefs and actions that lead to those events. So I'm still leaving that open. I'm not taking a position that our thoughts are absolute and generated by us consciously or even unconsciously, because I honestly don't know, and I'll leave it for those with more expertise, either within the spiritual fields or the fields of studying of consciousness, to provide more of an explanation of that. In any event, for our purposes, the stuck beliefs that I'm referring to at the moment are the ones that are playing out on our news. We are smack dab in the middle of the 2020 presidential election cycle. This being September, and the candidates are taking their hardened positions designed to influence you and me into seeing things their way and adopting their views, or at least the views they want us to have, in order that we will give them power to go do what they intend to do with it. Not that they're ever very transparent about those intentions, though some of them are. Most are pretty much just tell us what we want to hear. That will allow us to rationalize our voting for them, when in fact we probably don't agree with them on much of anything. That we just pick someone based upon some sort of nebulous set of criteria that are not. All right, I apologize for the delay. I have a new phone, as I was explaining in the last podcast, that I don't really know how to work all the whistles and bells on it, and hadn't figured out how to set the do not disturb. And so I was distracted here and I lost my point. So let's pick it up from here and move on. Basically what I'm trying to get you to is a point that you start looking at what other people are doing, particularly in the social and political arenas, and considering them as polarity manifestations of the excesses of their beliefs, where they are caught in particular perspectives that are causing them to engage in activities that are not particularly conducive to a harmonious society. I'm being kind here because what we see is during the election season, and again with beyond the election forces themselves, we're seeing everyone is trying to force their views and their will down everyone else's throats. And we see some alliances that band together where some people go on one side or another, but generally it's in every man for every woman for himself and herself. It's just like we seem to be at war with each other. If you ever go on Twitter, you could find yourself saying something that somebody agrees with you on, and they'll fight with you for probably nonsensical reasons, just because they didn't like the way you said something or you didn't come out as strident as they wanted you to. Those of you that are conservative may find yourself being called Nazis or racists. Those who are liberal or progressive may find yourself being called leftists or revolutionaries. Understand that these are all positions in the political spectrum, usually reflected on each end of the spectrum, and what you're not seeing is the area in the center. What we're happening is the various extremes are at war with each other, but neither extreme has the power to enforce and implement the changes to the world or the way that they want the world to work by themselves. So what they have to do is they have to enlist us to give them the power to do that. So what they do is they engage in this great psychological war to get us to take sides in their games and put our energy into advancing their causes. And we see that a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, which has been very oppressive in terms of forcing people to kneel and acquiesce to their demands to admit to wrongdoing that they never engaged in, just to satiate the demands and to keep from being harmed along the way. And again, a lot of that is being done under force. But it's not just in the Black Lives Matter or Antifa with the riots. It happens anywhere along the political spectrum. So we don't want to put it all on their shoulders. That's just an easy way to see it, because it's an extreme that is acting out within the public view right now. But we have these hardened positions on both sides of the political spectrum. You may find yourself supporting some of those views. You may find yourself even as an ardent believer and supporter and advocate for them. Perhaps you are even one of the people in the front lines that are fighting for freedom or fighting against oppression or whatever else it is that you think you are doing. But when in fact what's happening when we get involved in this is that we're being played. We're all being played by forces that want to manipulate us into allowing them to have control of our common affairs, our future, the conduct of our government, and whether crimes are going to be enforced, and if so, what those crimes are going to be, and there's a big war going on. We see the same wars within our government as down Trump. Because again, they're stuck to a viewpoint and an ideology that has them believing that he is the source of all evil and therefore has to be opposed. Whether he is or he isn't the issue. It's the perception that they have, or that they have convinced themselves they have. Now, again, within the situation, a lot of these people are not just working off of ideological grounds. Many of them are working on, how would you say, for personal benefit or personal protection, that they have had their fingers in the cookie jar or in the efforts to advance their own careers. They've taken particular sides that they're now looking to protect themselves from those positions. And again, these kind of abuses are widespread right now. We're seeing it everywhere. And the failure to address some of these abuses is causing people that aren't involved in those wars to lose faith in the justice system and how the conduct of our government is handled. Because right now it appears that everything is got to be either on one side or the other. And to be honest with you, most of us, if we allow the normal fluctuations of our energy, we'll find ourselves at various points of that continuum based on where we are on any particular day, as well as where those affairs are. We fluctuate back and forth. We're not static beings. Neither are they. But those who take these positions have locked themselves into a static position that they either have to let go of or they have to fight to defend it. And it is this conflict is what's marking our world right now, is that everybody is at odds with everybody else. And they all want to force their wills down everyone else's throats, or at least those that disagree with them and won't let them get their way. And they use fear. They make us afraid that everything we believe in and everything we hold dear is going to be lost if we allow the other side to take power. And it's this game that goes back and forth between them where they manipulate us, and yet things never really seem to change for we the people. We're still left to live our own lives, trying to carve out lives that work in them, while they continue to plunder and benefit from the conflicts. I mean, you see these sums of money that are going to the political wars are just immense. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars that are being donated anonymously behind the scenes by people like George Soros and others that are funding much of this upset and this uproar that's going on in the country. Yet, at least half of them don't even want to acknowledge publicly that that's what's happening, because, again, if they identify with where that money's coming from or is working to benefit a result that they want to have, then it appears to be good to them, and otherwise it's not. Well, it's not going to be good to be at one edge, the end of the polarity, or the other. Because when we go into those energies of conflict, all we do is create more conflict. Now, it's possible that one side will totally defeat and obliterate the other and not ever have to interact with them again, but it doesn't usually work out that way. Even when there is a total defeat, the ideas behind it just lurk beneath the surface until they come up and they're brought forward in some other manifestation, in some other way that they can reclaim, draw underground and out of sight. And now that's the Marxist philosophies have been coming back in full force here with the advent of, which have been sweeping the land in certain quarters. And I say certain quarters, I don't believe anywhere near that the people have taken over identity politics. But those who are espousing them are locked into a polarity that will take them where they want to go. Now, you are an awakening soul. As such, you have the ability to bring to bear a greater level of consciousness or awareness into the various factors that are going on that make things this way. And as you are looking at your outer reality, as you're looking at many of these same forces that I'm talking about right now, which are how the role of will and desire on these various sides is stuck and motivating the conflict. Well, first of all, the world we're trying to create is one of peace. You can't create peace through conflict. Conflict will only attract those who want to fight. Well, what I would like you to try to do is to quit playing the game. To recognize when you get caught up in those polarity swings and try to detach from them. Try to say that, yes, I see myself in this position, but recognize that position varies based upon your energies and the situations that are brought forward in your life and in your world that were going to allow you to respond to the needs of the moment. But when you get stuck in a position of thought, of a perspective that you feel you have to fight over or to assert it to somebody else, to being righteous, to be right, that prove yourself, whether it's a matter of your identity or an advancement of your interests, you need to know these things about yourself. That's part of knowing yourself, is understanding the motivations of why you say and do the things you do, and mostly why you think and feel the things you do. Many people are caught up in runaway emotions right now. When you start riding the dragon, it'll bite you. It'll bite you and take you down with it when it crashes and burns. Of course, it will not burn. It will just burn you up. So, what are you to do? as a soul that knows they're on the spiritual path, but you're having to deal with this world that you're living in every day. What in the world are you going to do when everybody's fighting all around you? And everything you read is to drag you into it, to try to make you incensed, incense you and piss you off, and to get you to a point that you're ready to rile up and hit somebody and take it out on anybody that gets in your way. How is that serving your journey to the light? Well, it allows you to see things about yourself that you still want to explore. But unfortunately, that keeps you exploring it within the context of the three-dimensional conflicts, instead of setting the stage for the world you are awakening to try to help anchor in order to bring in the energies of the new world that we want, of the fifth dimensional energies, of the energies of ascension. We have to be within those energies where we are now. We have to start bringing them from that nebulous future into the current timeline, into the now of where we are. But the only way to do that is to detach from the battles. I always used to say, you don't have to take sides in their silly games. I mean, they're playing a game for power. It has life and death consequences, and mostly wealth and poverty consequences, but it nevertheless doesn't control your evolutionary process. Again, you have to see that your life is a stop on the evolutionary journey of your soul, and that by gathering the experiences in the same old ways where you get caught up in them, you're not demonstrating that you have learned. You haven't passed the test. So it's going to keep coming back again. That's karma. Until you meet those energies in another way, karma keeps coming around. Karma is going to be coming around that mountain over and over and over again until you meet the energies another way. But what I'm suggesting is that you're meeting the energies of conflict with peace, with establishing yourself in a state of balance and staying there and doing your best not to allow yourself to get dragged in. This doesn't mean conceding the field of battle. It just means that you're not going to fight in the way that they're talking about. That you're not going to get upset, that you're not going to get yourself in a state of hatred of somebody else or their ideas or whatever else, because you're going to recognize you are both, or you're all, in this together, trying to work your way to the same place. Now, we've talked before about the inward facing of that place being the spiritual home from which we came, which is the physical state of what I would call the golden age that has been promised for so long, 1,000 years of peace and plenty. This is what we're trying to create, an atmosphere where that can take place. You who have started gathering the light within you and starting to understand yourself and maybe even a little bit about your role in this bigger picture, have an energy that you bring to bear to the world and reality that you're in. But when your reality wants you to fight and you accept the fight, then you're not doing anything to shift that reality toward the new one that we need. And what we're hoping to do is can begin to act as, giving a nudge or a pull to the rest of society to try to bring them along so that they don't stay locked in this conflict that's only going to lead to Armageddon and their own destruction, and maybe all of ours. So this is where I'm hoping you go. But that's going to be up to you. Consciousness is just an awareness that brings not just awareness, choice. It brings choice. But it also comes with intention. Because when you have consciousness, what are you going to do with it? Is your consciousness just designed to master and control your physical reality in this three-dimensional world? Is it to control the timeline of your linear reality? Or is it to find a way that you can move forward within that reality with others, with everyone, to the extent that they are willing to participate in that effort to allow you to be at peace and live a life that works for you, assuming you allow them the same privilege or same right. This concept is one I call spiritual justice. It's doing justice to your soul. It's not only get the experiences that you came for, but evolving to a place where you can allow others to be as they are created and still have a life that serves you, where you can go your own way free of their interference. It's a hard place to go because we have to learn how to deal with the conflicts of desires and fears that we have. And even more so, we have to learn how to moderate the influence of our will so that we don't go out and fight with everybody that doesn't see it the way we do. This is the test for humanity. I've said it several times. Draw a line from the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still. When Professor Barnhart talked to Klaatu, and he said, when we get to something along the lines of this, when we get to the precipice, we change. Well, the Polarity Wars are taking us to the precipice. And we're seeing it everywhere. We're not just seeing it in our domestic politics. We're seeing it in geopolitics, particularly in affairs with China right now. And underlying all of those games, there is an awakening of consciousness and desire within the people to not be ruled and to expect and get more from those who do serve them in positions of governance. Our common affairs, the way they have been conducted, do not serve us the way we need to be served. They have created a rigid structure that just tries to perpetuate itself and aggrandize power so that it can keep doing what it's doing. And within that structure are all these different individuals and groups that are vying for power, vying for advancement, vying to push their self-interests, to feed themselves. This whole power structure, we'll call them the elites, have formed the basis of what I would call a kleptocracy. That they're basically feeding at the trough of our common affairs. And they're benefiting over the very misery that they're helping to create, helping to perpetuate. And we've seen this in the rise of populism all over the world. We saw it in the Arab Spring. We see it at the core of the movements here of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. That is this great dissatisfaction with the way things are. So then they start looking around for ideas to justify the discontent that they have with the status quo. Now they're recognizing an inner urge to address the status quo, but they're so caught up in their polarities that are distorting the way they're perceiving those signals from within, that they are acting out in ways that do harm to others and to the greater society. Now, there is always some element of gain in some circles and loss in others when there are changes that occur. But as you can see from them and the politicians and the money influencers behind the scenes and all of those that suck on the... I won't use the term. Let's just say that they're pigs at the trough that are benefiting from all the money that's thrown around taken and thrown from us and thrown around by government. That is all to advance their interests. But they do it in the name of advancing ours, in order that they can get us on board to allow them to continue. Well, if we want things to change, we've got to figure out how to pull our power back from all sides of the battle. And this is where it's going to be hard for us, because at some point we're going to have to step forward and use our energy to show and start living another way, a way of voluntarily harmonizing our disparate energies, where our polarities are naturally balanced out and we're able to walk the middle path together. That everyone understands that they can't have it exactly their way on an extreme, because we all have to move forward together. But nobody wants to go forward together. Everybody wants their way, going your way most of the time. Unless you are called by your inner voice to actually get out there and fight for one side or the other, then your articles, whether it's attending events or voting for one side or another, you're just going to be taking sides in their wars. And the wars are going to continue, and you're not going to be any closer to living the kind of life that anchor in this new world. And our world's not going to be any closer to that kind of a situation. It's going to continue on. Professor Barnhart, about when we get to the precipice, we change. You can see our world is rushing headlong toward the precipice of our own destruction. And we see the possibility of a dystopian future happening in many ways, either by single events or a conflux of many. And the energy behind this dystopia is building not only from a standpoint of the societal implications, but of those who believe that they need to bring about this dystopia and bring the whole system down in order to build the one that they want. Well, again, that's the stage where we already have to have our energies out and circulated and available for consumption by the masses. And they have to hear this message of peace, and this message of not taking sides, and this message of moderating your polarities as a responsibility to the reality in which you find yourself. Because that's the only way we're going to come back from the precipice. If we don't, we will destroy ourselves. Now, frankly, I'm hoping that we wake up and makes the changes that are necessary. But I don't know that we will. Right now, the way it looks is that we're heading headlong over that cliff. Just like lemmings, we're following each other to our own destruction. And worse than that, we seem to be speeding up. So, you're going to have to make some choices where you stand with relationship to all this. And that's where we go back to the inner side when you're looking at yourself, which is, well, what is your relationship to the reality that you're in? Where are your creative energies going to be contributed to your world? Where have you been contributing them? And have they been, where are they within the polarized swings of your own energies? And where do you find them vis-a-vis the polarities that you see with others in the world? This is important. It's important to know yourself. It's to understand your reality, because first it's about you and your life and the life you're here to live, that your soul needs you to live, to gather the experiences you're here for, that you will use to make that inner journey when you're inward facing, looking at your soul and your journey back to spirit, back to God. But now we're looking outwards. We're looking at the world around us, and we're seeing a hell of a mess out there. And you're only going to be able to positively impact that mess in terms of the new world aspects. And I'm talking about the fifth dimensional world aspects. I'm not talking about a world of command and control where it's dominated by a few people and telling everyone else what to do. That kind of world I'm not interested in. But mankind sure seems to be, because that seems to be an energy that is still spreading, where people are succumbing to stories that a chosen few know what you need and will be able to give it to you if only you'll give them power. This is the result of the socialist phenomena. Now, those on the so-called democratic side of that, and again, we're in a republic which puts the power in the hands of a few, and even fewer hands of the bureaucrats that are wielding that power on a day-to-day basis and interpreting it and using it either as a carrot or a stick to implement whatever it is they feel that they're trying to do. We're going to have to find a way to neutralize those activities. But if we try to do so from within the polarities, from an opposing polarity from where they are now, we will not succeed, because their defenses will be up and we're going to have to fight just as hard. And when we get there, and if we do prevail, they're going to come back and do it again. We can't change others. We can only show them the errors of their ways and try to neutralize the harm that they do. Well, unfortunately, we neutralize harm through consciousness and illumination and choice, not through will and desire and fear. And that's where you need to look at yourself. You need to know yourself. You need to understand when you are succumbing to these things and you start diffusing the triggers in you so that they are not used against you to drag you into those wars. If those triggers are within you, those inner conditions that are used to rile you up and set you in motion, then you're going to find yourself a whole lot more comfortable to being out there fighting, and it's going to be much, much harder for you to find your peace, much less to engage with your world from a place of peace. Peace is one of those things that is much talked about, supposedly much desired, but when push comes to shove, I think people would rather fight than switch. Well, what I'm suggesting is that you let go of what it is so you don't have to switch, that you don't have to fight, that you can engage those polarities without a reciprocal polarity of your own. It will not be easy. They will treat you as an outcast. They will attack you. They will do everything. They may even try to destroy you. But you must be strong in the light and in knowing that the way that you are traveling is not only important for you in terms of walking your talk, but it's important for the future of our world, because if you don't stand up for it, who's going to? Or are we just going to all jump on board and say sayonara to this experiment with reality and let God push the reset button? I don't know. It remains to be seen what your choice is going to be. It's a choice you're going to have to make over and over again, and you're going to find you're going to be able to make it better in some moments than others, because and when you can't make it easily, it's usually because there's something in you that you have not yet addressed that's tying you to the way they are, or the way things are, or the way you want them to be. And again, this is the renunciation or release of desires that I was discussing yesterday in the last program. When we are too attached to our desires, we fight for what we want. But the spiritual path, the inner path, is one of letting go of those desires. So what I'm suggesting is that you bring the ways of the spiritual path into your life to use it to deal with the situations that are before you today. It may not be easy. It may not necessarily bring you a life you want, at least until you have realigned yourself within so that you are only about this harmony and this peace and this energy of where we go one, we go all. I personally am not interested in a world where either left or right wins and forces it down everyone else's throat. I don't know what this new world should look like, but I know what I want it to feel like. And I want it to feel like peace and joy and wonder and passion. You play a role in all of that coming about. You help to bring it about by how you make the choices in the moment, how you go about your daily affairs, how you respond to what you see on Twitter or Facebook, or not if you turn them off. What happens when you see the news? And a lot of times I'll find myself watching the news just to see where the vibrations are within me, to see where I'm coming down on the issue. It's sort of like a test to me as to what I want and how I want to interact with my world. And there are times when I feel like I have to get involved and say something. But usually it is just to a point of pointing out a locked perspective so that the individual I'm talking to will have the opportunity to perhaps see it another way. I try not to be denigrating in my responses or comments, but I have been known to be contentious and adversarial myself in the past. And we do know what the term spiritual warrior refers to. And having come from a martial arts background and many lifetimes on the path, it is one of those things that I continually have to check myself. Because being a warrior doesn't mean you have to go out and fight. It just means you are prepared for battle and able to wield it and able to do it if you are forced to. Only when your inner voice calls should you fight. If it's your ego pulling you into it, that's when you have to say no. Just say no to your ego. It loves the polarity wars. It feels passion. It gets adrenaline rushing through its body and through your body, and it makes you feel alive. But you're only alive in the world that you have now, this three-dimensional world. And your life that you're trying to create there when you're in that space is one that is going to deny that ability to somebody else as you clash over whose will prevail. I suggest another way. I suggest that you, as a light worker, as an awakening soul, as one who has gathered the light and using it to see yourself in terms of this spiritual journey, turn that awareness on the world that you're living in and begin to use it to reshape how you engage the other people in it. If you are fighting, if you are finding yourself in situations that repeat themselves over and over again, perhaps you should look in the mirror, or better yet, look inside of yourself. But you can't. You then have to take that and put it to work. It's like, oh gosh, I remember hearing stories from the priest who would preach about the members of his congregation who would be all in this warm and fuzzy spiritual space when they're feeling love and connection when they're in church, and then they go out and get in their cars, and all of a sudden they're ready to kill each other in the parking lot to get out of there, to get home. You gotta walk your talk all the time. It's not a matter that you do it only when you're in that mood that you feel close to God. God is everywhere. And for you, you need to find God in the conflict. You need to find God in the space between the conflict. You need to find God in you, in the relationship that you choose for yourself with the conflict. Now, this is important because you are bringing consciousness to the conflict, so you've got to decide what is the energy that you're going to bring to it, and what are you going to create with the energy that you have. What is your contribution to the reality that creates this, to the collective consciousness that creates this reality? Your thoughts and emotions and actions all have an impact. Well, you tell me, what is it that you're here to do? What are you here to contribute? What are the gifts that you bring to the table that no one else has? I can't answer those questions for you. Maybe you can't, but you need to, because that's going to influence how you go about trying to find that middle ground and staying out of the polarity wars. But if you're called to fight, go fight as best you can. Give it your all. But when you fight, try to remember the attributes and characteristics that are most dear inside you. Love, light, compassion, caring, honoring others, treating others as they want to be treated, or at least as you would want to be treated. And maybe even lowering your defenses a little bit so you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to be hurt. If only to check to see how far you've come in releasing those conditions within you. Oh, we have so much to cover on this path, and I think we've done enough for today. You have the ability now to go out and see your world in a different way, to see it as an interaction of energies, of interests, of agendas, all of which are expressing and trying to manifest the different polarities or extremes that they have within them. I hope that's not you. I hope you will choose to at least try on the middle path for size, to make peace both the end and the means to get there, because that's where we're all trying to go, to that world where peace rules. And that is not peace ruled by an iron fist, but peace ruled by consciousness, manifested by all. That's what we want. That's where we're trying to go. That's what you are here to help create. I know that you will do your part. I'll just keep trying to redirect your attention to your awareness of the interaction of the energies within you and between you and the source of your being. That's all I got for today. Again, I'm John Dennison. You can find me and my work at johndennison.com, where I offer a free consultation on a whole host of matters. I don't want to just talk about spiritual matters. I'm a lawyer. I do business and consulting and coaching in addition to all this. So if you're trying to find a way to get your mission out, or trying to find a way to get your own peace and you're hitting obstacles, feel free to call me. Give you 15 minutes free. We'll see what we can do for you. In any event, thank you for joining me today. Please go with love. God bless you indeed. I am John. You have been listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls move in a better way through a blue pill world. For more information, visit us at peaceoptions.com to explore how you can find your peace through knowing yourself and following your inner voice. Or at missionlaunch.com, where we offer coaching and consulting to help you make the difference in your world.